Hi everyone, I'm Susie. I'm American and I've been living here in Dijon, France since 2008. I started taking French in 7th grade, majored in French in college, have a master's degree in teaching English, and have been teaching English for over 20 years. And no, this is not going to be one of those I became fluent in 3 months videos that you see all over YouTube. This is the brutally honest truth about what language learning looks like, even after many, many years of dedication. Today I'm going to share 3 things: a big mistake I made in my French learning journey, the turning point that changed everything for me, and the valuable takeaway that might just change how you approach your language learning. Let me just take you back to when I was 12 years old, sitting in my 7th grade French class. I was completely captivated by this beautiful language, and I thought, if I just work long enough and hard enough, one day I too will sound like a native French speaker. In fact, what prompted me to make this video is my husband just uncovered a video of me speaking French from 2012, 13 years ago, and I have no recollection of even making this video, but apparently I made it for a French class in the US, and it's a video of me touring the viewers around our apartment in French and narrating the video as I go, describing what I see. And we were watching the video the other night, and I just kept thinking, oh my goodness, I really haven't made much progress in French in the last 13 years. This was definitely something that I had suspected, but the video just absolutely confirms it. So I'm going to let you be the judge. I'm going to play the clip from 2012, then I'm going to repeat the same thing with my best pronunciation today, and then you're going to hear my son say the same thing so that you can compare with a real native French speaker. And as you're watching, just keep the following things in mind. Since 2012, I have lived continuously here in France, speaking French every day. I socialize mainly in French. I read French books, mainly contemporary fiction. I just picked up a few to show you. These are all books that I have read recently in French. So I read plenty in French. I watch TV shows in French, movies. I listen to podcasts. I can even follow stand-up comedy, for example, in French. I don't necessarily get all of the cultural references, but I can follow along for sure. And I even achieved a C2 level certification on a French test that I took in 2019. C2 is meant to be the very highest level in the European framework of reference, but I will let you judge, and you can see I don't think I have the same level of fluency and native-like pronunciation in French as I do in English, for example. All right, here we go for the whole world to hear me in 2012 versus me today versus my son. Okay, Louis, I'm going to say something in French and you're going to repeat after me, okay?
Okay.
Bonjour, bienvenue chez nous.
Bonjour, bienvenue chez nous.
Bonjour, bienvenue chez nous.
Nous habitons au premier étage.
Nous habitons au premier étage.
Nous habitons au premier étage.
On va aller visiter l'appartement et je vais vous montrer la rue.
On va aller visiter l'appartement. Je vais vous montrer la rue.
On va aller visiter l'appartement. Je vais vous montrer la rue.
Là, on va monter les escaliers.
Là, on va monter les escaliers.
Là, on va monter les escaliers.
On ouvre la porte et on est dans l'appart.
On ouvre la porte et on est dans l'appart.
On ouvre la porte et on est dans l'appart.
Voici la terrasse.
Voici la terrasse.
Voici la terrasse.
Voici la cuisine.
Voici la cuisine.
Voici la cuisine.
Voici le salon.
Voici le salon.
Voici le salon.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
If I'm being very kind to myself, maybe I have improved a tiny bit. But after 33 years of learning French, that's 3/4 of my life. My accent announces itself the moment I say bonjour, literally the first word I say to people, and they can tell that I'm not a native French speaker. And yet I say bonjour every day, and I have been saying bonjour several times a day, every day, for the past 17 years. Will I ever get to the point where people don't instantly know the moment I say bonjour that I'm not a native French speaker? And on a side note, how cute was our old apartment right in the historic city center? I love that place. I miss that place. Anyway, the mistake that I alluded to at the beginning of the video was not the fact that I originally chose to learn French. In fact, choosing to take French all those years ago and sticking with it since then has had an incredibly positive impact on my life. I basically owe everything to that decision I made when I was 12 years old to take French. And my tenacity to stick with it all throughout my schooling. No, the mistake that I made was believing that with enough dedication, immersion, and practice, I would one day sound like a native speaker. So, yeah, I still have my American accent when I speak in French, and I also have an American accent when I speak in English too. And we all have accents when we speak in any language, and accents are charming, right? Meanwhile, I have these annoying friends and acquaintances who sound perfectly French when they're speaking in French, despite the fact that they are not native French speakers themselves. And I don't know how I get myself into these situations, but this will happen sometimes where it will be me and a friend who speaks French perfectly speaking with a third person, and we're all conversing in French and everything is going along just fine. And then suddenly the third person will stop and they'll look at me quizzically and they'll say something like, "Huh, Susie, it's crazy because your friend speaks French perfectly with no detectable accent, whereas you still have your strong American accent." And I just try to laugh it off, but of course, inside, I'm annoyed with myself for not being able to get rid of my accent. As a language teacher myself, it's only ever happened once in 20 years where I was confused, where I thought that a student was a native English speaker and they weren't. Sometimes I'll have students in class that have an English speaking parent, and I consider them to be a native English speaker, or they lived in an English speaking country at some point in their childhood, or they went to school in an English speaking environment. And so I consider those kids native English speakers. But only once have I ever thought that a kid was a native English speaker, and it turned out that he was just someone who was really bright and dedicated and motivated and who had taught himself English and who spoke English perfectly, just like me. In fact, I thought he was American. But I think some of my students could get there eventually. I mean, when I have them in class, they've been taking English for maybe 10 years or so. So 20 years from now, who knows, they might sound like perfectly native English speakers themselves as well. I remember one of my professors in grad school telling us that only 5% of language learners ever completely lose their accent. And I don't know where she got that statistic, and this was a long time ago, but I did look around online and I couldn't confirm that number. But if you do have access to the data, please let me know in the comments below because I'm definitely curious. But thinking back now on my experience, not just myself, but on my students and on my friends and people that I know who have learned languages over the years, even 5% seems high to me. So I think all this time I've just been chasing this ideal that is statistically just really unlikely for me to ever achieve. So what changed? When did I finally accept reality? Have I finally accepted reality? I think it happened at a local polling station recently when I went to vote because actually, technically, I am French. I have had French citizenship since 2020, and I am very proud to participate in all of the elections as well. So I turn up at the local polling station with my ID card, and of course, what is the first thing that I say to the polling station workers? Bonjour. The poll workers were, of course, very kind and did their job and checked my ID the way that they did for everybody else. And I'm sure that it didn't even register with them. But of course, I felt that same pang of disappointment that I always feel with myself and my inability to even properly pronounce the most basic word in French. But then I thought, it's not a big deal. They understand me, I understand them. Okay, I wasn't born in France, but I am French and I'm participating in this society. I contribute to this society. And, just because I have an accent, it doesn't diminish my value in this society. It's not necessarily something that I have to be permanently embarrassed about. I'm measuring success by the wrong metric. I started thinking about all the people that I interact with regularly in French and even friendships that I've made that have been built on the basis of communication in French. And my husband, I speak to him in French all the time, and he tells me he doesn't even hear my accent anymore, and he doesn't even correct me anymore. But it's not because I'm not making mistakes. I am still making mistakes. He just doesn't bother to correct me anymore. Maybe he thinks that I've reached a plateau, and I just can't make any more progress anyway. He's probably right. I am also coming to the point where I see my accent not as a failure, but as a vestige of the interesting journey that I've been on. I'm not French. Well, technically on paper I am, but I'm not a native French speaker. I'm a lifelong French learner, and I think that's something to be proud of. I think it's fascinating that you can go from not being French to being French from one day to the next, that it's just this administrative decision that you have the paperwork and that it's done. But that learning the language is this ongoing, in fact, never-ending process that happens over years or decades even. So, what is the valuable takeaway from my experience? I don't necessarily think this is what you want to hear, but I believe that language learning is an incredibly slow process. And I think at first you can make a lot of progress really quickly, and then the whole process kind of slows down, even if you're making a lot of effort and investing a lot of time. And that's fine. After all, the goal of language learning is not to become a perfect mimic, it's to connect with people, to understand new perspectives, and to expand your world. And my accent doesn't prevent any of that. It's just evidence of the journey I've been on. Here's what I wish I'd understood earlier. 1. Communication matters more than perfection. Can you express your thoughts? Can you understand others? Can you navigate life in your target language? If so, then you're succeeding. 2. Set realistic milestones that aren't accent-based. Celebrate being able to follow a stand-up comedy routine or read a novel, or have a long, deep conversation with someone. These are incredible achievements, n'est-ce pas? And try to find real enjoyment along the way. This will increase your motivation as well, and try not to focus too much on perfection, which is an unattainable goal anyway. 4. Embrace your identity as a multilingual person. Your accent tells a story. It says, I wasn't born speaking this language, but I cared enough to try to learn it, and I'm still making an effort today. I get tons of exposure in French, and I am a language teacher, so I know how these things work. And I'm telling you, the process is slow. It's very, very slow. But it can also be incredibly rewarding if you can reframe what success looks like for you. So, am I fluent in French after all this time? Absolutely. Will I ever sound like a native French speaker? Probably not. No, actually, I'll go with a decisive no. And that's absolutely fine. Language learning is a journey, not a destination. The real question isn't, do I sound native, but has learning this language enriched my life? Encore un petit coup en français? Allez, oui, il est encore là mon accent. Et alors? If you've had similar realizations in your language learning journey, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. And if you want more brutally honest takes about life in France, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and sign up for my email list. The link is in the description below. And I'll link here to some other videos that I made, one about extensive reading, which is an amazing technique to progress in your target language, and another one about raising bilingual kids. You heard my son, he's the real deal. Thanks again for watching. Merci encore, and until the next time, à bientôt!